and welcome to 30 Days of Hoya. Today we will take a look at hoyalatifolia. In the second frame you can see a better image, a better video of this Hoya, and you can see more of that splash on the leaves. Hoyalatifolia is native to Southeast Asia, to places like Thailand, Indonesia and Malaysia. Now I'm not quite sure in terms of temperature where I would categorize this Hoya. I've only grown it at around 20 to 23 degrees of Celsius. I did find different information that this is a cool growing Hoya, which would mean it tolerates those lower temperatures down to even 10 degrees of Celsius. I also found information that this is a warm loving Hoya, which would mean it doesn't want to get below 20 degrees of Celsius. Now that's a very big difference in temperature, I would say. I would definitely not push it down to 10 degrees of Celsius, but I think perhaps around 70 degrees or 60 degrees of Fahrenheit, which would be 15 degrees of Celsius, I believe those temperatures would be fine. So something similar to your Hoya macrophylla. Again, I cannot tell you from my experience, as I told you, I've only grown it at around 20 to 23 degrees of Celsius, which I believe is higher than 70 degrees of Fahrenheit. Now, in terms of light, I would say that this Hoya would like bright and direct light, and I think this one can take more of that direct light for shorter periods of time. You can see this leaf in the second frame. This is one of the more normal leaves. It has a darker green color to it. If we take a look at the new leaf here, you will see that it is a bit lighter in color. So I didn't notice that this one will get a bit red when it gets more light, but rather than that, the leaves will look a bit paler, I would say. So I will definitely try to move it back a bit from the light. That's becoming a more difficult task for me because this one has grown a lot since I got it. I got this Hoya last September as a 2-node cutting, and in the second frame you can actually see this is where the cutting ended. So this is the end of the second node, and all of this is actually new growth since I rooted it, so it was of course unrooted, and there is another vine that's popping up right there. So I would say this is a very good grower. I actually don't keep it like this. If you have seen my Hoya tour video, you have seen that I keep this one on a trellis. But for the purpose of this video, I just removed that so you could see a bit better and I could make it more workable, I would say. Now the leaves have this very nice splash on them, and for me each new leaf is a bit larger, so at one point I thought this one would be the largest leaf, but then again I got this one, which is maybe 1.5 times bigger than the one that I just showed you. And this is not even the maximum for this Hoya. I would say this Hoya grows quite fast for me, so it did put out a lot of new growth. It did spend the winter under my LED lights, so I think that definitely helped with that growth. And I did keep it in slightly warmer temperatures, so around 23 degrees of Celsius I would say was the daytime temperature for this Hoya. Now in terms of watering, I would say I water this one every 7 to 10 days. You can see this leaf here is a bit flimsy, and when they get like that, when they lose their firmness, that means they just need water. And you can kind of see on the back it's getting a bit wrinkly, so it's definitely time to water this Hoya. On some of the newer leaves you can see I cannot bend it so easily. It is quite tolerant when you underwater it. I never had any new leaves fall on me because I didn't water it on time, but you will see that the older growth will get a bit flimsy and it's not very attractive. So I try to keep it well hydrated. Of course that doesn't mean to overwater it. Just check every maybe week to see if it needs water, and maybe that watering day will not be every 7 days, but maybe it will be the day after. But you will definitely know if you check them every week. So, you know, don't leave them and don't come back to your Hoyas for 2 weeks, because that's not good. You can see the mix is the same, like for the rest of my Hoyas. There is a lot of bark in my mix, leca, perlite. I'm not sure, I think there is ceramis in this one. Cocoa peat and general potting mix, and it does really well in this mix, I would say. I actually recently repotted it. It used to live in a much smaller cup and it did well there. That's where I rooted it, but I could not keep it hydrated, really. I would water it and it would always stay limp, the leaves would stay limp. And when I moved it to a slightly larger pot, it has been much easier for me to take care of it, to water it, and it looks much better. There is some damage on the older leaves, but that's just from shipping the cuttings, so that this damage happened there. I'm actually keeping these leaves even though they are damaged because they're still green, so I do think they contribute to the plant. I do think they bring in some of that energy. I fertilize this Hoya every time I water, so in spring and summer I will just use the normal dosage of my orchid fertilizer or the seaweed fertilizer, and then in winter I will double that down, so I will make a much milder dosage. As you can see, the leaf of this Hoya is quite big, and honestly this is small for this Hoya, so if you plan on getting this, make sure to first look at the pictures of adult hoyalatifolias, because you will be impressed by the size of it. I kind of hope they stay on the smaller side, this size. I do hope I get like 1 or 2 really huge leaves just so I can see them, but I wouldn't want all of them to be big because it's really massive and I don't have so much space. And it really looks beautiful when it is very long, when the vine is very long, and when it gets huge leaves. I think it's just a bit of a problem in terms of space. I never really had any issues with this Hoya. I haven't seen any pests. It has been quite resilient. The most important thing for me, the tip of the vine never dried out if I forgot to water it. The leaves, the new growth, they never fell off if I forgot to water it, which does happen sometimes. So I would say this is quite a resilient Hoya, and I would definitely recommend it to someone, even to someone who is just starting with Hoyas. I have never seen it in a garden center, and I don't think you can actually find it there, maybe in a specialized nursery, but I got this from a Hoya collector, and it's not a very pricey Hoya to get, so I would definitely try my hand in this one because it indeed is a very good grower, and it is very satisfying to see a new leaf every now and then, and you know, you're doing something right. So in that way, I think this is a very rewarding Hoya. Maybe you will not flower it right away, but I think that doesn't really matter so much when you're starting out. I think being able to grow them is much more important, and of course you can enjoy the new growth. This was Hoyalatifolia. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in our next 30 Days of Hoya.